Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Hey, hello, how you doing? Welcome to the program. It's the 7th of September, and Rolling Stones have a new album coming out. It's 2023. It's absurd. Unbelievable. You know, there's things, if you live long enough, you can't believe it. I can't believe the Rolling Stones have a new album coming out. That old people can sit on their front porch smoking pot legally. Those are some of the nice things, I guess. Bruce Springsteen told his Pittsburgh concert. That's not good. But he's an old fart himself. He's got peptic ulcers. Oh. All these old farts, and then there's the dead ones, Freddie Mercury. My God. Did you see? This is all just oops, I'm sorry. Forgive me. What his piano, Freddie Mercury's piano went for? My God. Well, $2 million. So when people buy something like that, would they buy it? First of all, I guess they're sort of thinking it's an investment, but the real thing that's going on is just bragging rights. That's the piano Freddie Mercury. Is that what it's about? That must be it. The piano that he used to compose Bohemian Rhapsody. $2 million at auction. I don't know. By the way, the Stones album, which I guess won't be released until October 20th, but the critics have their hands on it already, and the Times of London has said that it is the best Rolling Stone album since 1878. 1978. Yep. So, came upon something on TV the other day. I forget what. It was during the day. Why did I turn it on? I never do. I did. And it was on MSNBC. And there was a trial going on. I had no idea that was happening, but it was the Atlanta, and it was the courthouse there, and it had to do with one of the Trump trials, and it was a hearing on whether or not two of the Trump's co-defendants could sever their cases. Whatever. I mean, none of that mattered much because I found myself fascinated. Just fascinated. I don't think a lot of people would think that was great television, but there was this judge. Mostly you looked at him, and mostly you saw the back of the heads of the attorneys who were arguing their case before him. And it was just fascinating to listen to the arguments, to hear the attorneys do their thing, to see the judge in real time responding, wrestling with it, to see how the whole system functions. And I was thinking, man, this is why. This is why. It would be such a important thing for the federal courts to allow Trump's trial, the January 6th trial, to be televised. They never will. But there's something about, if you want to try to start healing this country, I would think having people have to see the legal system working. It doesn't work in a histrionic way. It is plodding. It is very serious. It requires courtesy and decorum. There are rules. And it is so unlike the, mosh pit of our political and cultural reality in the country now, which thrives on the exact opposite of that courtroom decorum. If people would watch the case, if they would watch Trump's attorneys defend and watch the prosecution put its case out, watch how justice, how our legal system, how the system actually works, it would be the greatest history lesson that most Americans will ever have. I can't think of anything more consequential, and it won't happen. Because the old farts that run the federal judiciary won't let it. And they'll be wrong. It'll be such a lost opportunity. Perhaps the most important trial in the history of this country. And everyone should be able to be in that courtroom in real time. And since the ability to do that exists, my gosh, do not have that happen. Watching this thing yesterday, there's with the feds think, well, people will grandstand. No, they won't. They're there to win a case. If you, it would not be. I mean, they're just wrong. Anyway, I'm just saying. I was just stuck, listening, watching, trying to follow the arguments. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, and for those of us without legal training, it's sometimes difficult to follow, but it's fascinating. And there was something that was, I felt less anxious about all of it watching. It was like all of a sudden the grown-ups were in charge. And that's certainly not the case in the world that we're living in. And the grown-ups are not grown-ups, by and large. Oh, gosh. Okay, well, listen, I have stuff here. Yesterday, I was wondering, yesterday? Who cares, Colin? I hate that when people are trying to tell you something and they start, saying, well, yesterday, wait, was that yesterday or was that? And you're thinking, it doesn't matter. Oh, you just get to the heart of the story. It doesn't matter. But I was wondering at some point in the last few days, who was going to clean up that mess that 70,000 people left in the mud in that desert? And it turns out, obviously, that it's taken care of. It's being taken care of. And it always is. Burning Man happens on federal land. And part of the permitting process, I mean, you have to ask the government if you can, in fact, use that federal land to create a 70,000 person city over a week and a half. And, the feds, say, yeah, but and it's the Bureau of Land Management. So they are in charge of the permit that allows this thing to happen, and part of the process is that they are to leave that desert in pristine condition. And the New York Times has a piece today about how there are people, volunteers, who literally, some of them on their hands and knees are picking up sequins, things that should not really be in that desert, just finding every trace of what all those 70,000 people have left behind. And you can only imagine. And apparently this year it's horrific because of the mud. But it will be cleaned up. Every last bit of it. Cigarette butts, zip ties. There's carpets. And what they do is then they make sure that the ground is absolutely leveled. I mean, level as it was. And it's amazing. I guess so in a week or so, there will be no evidence that those 70,000 mud-soaked people were there, which is amazing. Oh, I needn't have worried about it. I was. Another thing I mentioned the other day, was so many of the stories that are in the news these days are weather-related stories. They're about the impact of the warming planet on the life on this planet. And it is, I don't know about you, I don't even look or read a lot of it. I do the headlines. God knows how many people killed in flooding in, where is it right now? Greece? I mean, the fires in Europe and the flooding, and people are just being wiped out left, right, and center in all these places. And I mean, you just, after a certain point, you almost tune out. But you can't deny that the news didn't used to be, and relatively recently did not used to be, filled with all these stories that are essentially about the climate and the result of the warming that we are responsible for of the planet. It's just incredible. And so there was this one that I mentioned the other day, had to do with insects, mosquitoes. Who likes mosquitoes? Anybody? I am horribly allergic to a mosquito bite. So that if I get bitten, I become grotesque. I mean, I was bitten on the side of my face last week. And for 3 days, I looked like I had an odd case of the mumps. I mean, my face was this hugely swollen. One little mosquito bite, that's what happens to me. Huge. You get a little welt. I get like 20 times that. So I just hate them. I live in terror of them. Not enough that I would like spray that stinky stuff on myself, but I try to be vigilant. which goes against enjoyment of the outdoors, right? You can't be vigilant looking for a mosquito when you're trying to ostensibly relax and enjoy the beauty of the outdoors. But I bring this up because Dana Milbank had written a piece. He's Washington Post, right? Yeah. About how he was astonished that he was really always just fighting the mosquitoes in his yard in the city, and that he had gone off to the country for a while and was astonished that there didn't seem to be the mosquitoes that he was fighting all the time in the city in the country. And he thought, what the heck? But the reason is that the country is a much more pristine, and God knows it isn't. It has not been as manipulated and touched by us, humans. When humans, now we're thinking cities, where we are densely packed in a city, where humans are, we cause so much trouble all the time. So we have gone after the bugs, right? The mosquitoes, everybody else. And we've pretty much done a hell of a job. We've eradicated just an extraordinary amount of the insect population. And we don't care. Is it a good guy or a bad guy? It's just not us, right? We just kill. And we screw up the ecosystem in which the bugs live. And consequently, you end up with a few really hardy species just going gangbusters, while others are eradicated. And guess who's going gangbusters in the city? Mosquitoes. Not the bugs. And it's so absurd because with so much of what we do, it's like we want to get rid of them. And what do we end up doing? Creating an environment in which we get more. People who follow this kind of thing, scientists say, there is no debate about what's happening. We are seeing the rapid decline of insects pretty much all over the world. And the biologist, the legendary biologist, E.O. Wilson, 40 years ago, he wrote this: I doubt that the human species could last more than a few months if insects were eradicated. First, most of the fish, the amphibians, the birds, the mammals would crash to extinction. Next would go the flowering plants and the forests. The earth would literally rot. And within a few decades, the world would return to where it was billions of years ago, composed really of just bacteria, algae, and a few other very, very, very simple plants. If you eradicate the insects. And he went on to say that insects are the little things that run the world. And we humans, in our unbelievable arrogance and stupidity, are hell-bent on killing as many as we can. And what that is a suicide mission. A group of entomologists ranked the top 3 causes of the massive decline of insects around the world, and every single one were human created. Pesticides, pollution, rising temperatures. So when I mentioned the other day that in 1963, the Bronx Zoo had this marvelous exhibit right next to the gorillas, it said the most dangerous animal in the world. And all there was a mirror, because it's us. You know, agriculture is to blame for a lot of this, but actually, we, the urban dwellers, probably use more insecticide per acre than the big commercial, agribusinesses do. And as such, we've created a kind of sterilized environment in which just a few species can flourish, and we can see who they are. They're the ones that are bedeviling us. Spotted lanternfly, the cockroach, the mosquito. And there are people who are really worried about what they call the insect apocalypse. And the thing is, they also say that unlike a climate taking on that big, huge problem, this is one we could get a grip on if we cared enough. And each one of us obviously can play a role. I finally got my mother, after I don't know how many years, to stop using pesticides on her lawn. And she did about, I think, 3 years ago, finally stopped. And even she now acknowledges that the lawn looks fine, and the birds, there's so many bird song. She sits on the back porch and just revels in the song of birds. Not that there weren't some before, but there's clearly more. So here's some of the things that we can do. You can get rid of the lawn. I've been squawking about that forever. Most people won't. Okay, then just stop mowing it so often. Every time you mow it, you're destroying the ecosystem that these insects require. Stop deadheading flowers. Stop cutting back the dead stalks. You think it makes your garden look beautiful, but I got news for you. Those are places that insects use and birds use. And Milbank says, and so if your neighbor says, well, you're sort of letting your yard go, aren't you? He says, just say to them, yeah, I'm letting my yard go, but I'm trying to save the planet. There is no excuse for ever using pesticides. Also, stop the fertilizer. I mean, there's so many things we do without thinking. Stop washing your car in the driveway to spare macroinvertebrates in nearby streams. Turn off the exterior lights at night. Anyway, there are so many things that we could do, but We've got to stop thinking only of ourselves. Most bugs don't bite. We have created the environment in which mosquitoes now thrive. As one entomologist says, we've created the problem, and then we blame it on them, the bugs. Okay, just saying. Think about it a little bit, huh? Think about it. It just drives me crazy. You know, the landscape companies that come in and they constantly knocking, cutting down things that if you leave them up through the winter, if you don't rake, who rakes? Does that even own a rake? If you stop blowing everything around. There was once, and I've lost it, had it for a long time. Somebody composed a letter that God wrote to humans about when he sees that what we're doing to the leaves in the fall. And he goes berserk. and the gist of the letter is everything that nature does is the way it is supposed to be. And we create these artificial environments, which we deem somehow better. And then we're stunned when the consequence, ultimate consequence, is that we're under attack. Anyway, I despair, as I know I just... I saw a quote. It just froze my blood. It was a quote from former Governor Huckabee. I mean, his daughter is now the governor, right? What is that, Arkansas? I don't know. Arkansas, maybe. But last week, Mike, his name is right, Mike Huckabee, said this about all the trials coming up for Donald Trump. He said this: if these trials keep Trump from winning or even running in 2024, it is going to be the last American election that will be decided by ballots rather than bullets. There's a Republican, a respected Republican former governor. They're off the rails. I'm sorry, I'm depressing myself. I mean, I'm assuming if I'm depressing myself, I'm really depressing you. And I'm sorry. But I don't know. What am I supposed to do here, guys? I'm serious. For, good God, almost 40 years, I have done what I'm doing right now. Piggybacked on the news of the day and opined about it and or shared thoughts and stories and whatever. That's what I've done. I've been very lucky to have been able to do it. And of course, if your starting point is the news, things are going to be dire and sometimes, but we've never been where we are right now. You don't know. when my sister was on the other day, we spoke a little bit about, and neither of us really knew what Musk had done, but I've since found out. Musk had done something because the Anti-Defamation League was calling him out. And I guess things really got bad. And what I didn't know is that Musk has pretty much turned what used to be Twitter over to the total haters. I mean, the anti-Semites, the racists, it used to be, they were always sort of there, but no, they're like, own the place now. And he not only has allowed it, he's aided and abetted it. And what he did the other day is actually blame the Jews for the fact that Twitter, or X, as he renamed it, is failing and ain't making money. And that his investment in it has gone down the tubes. Of course, it has nothing to do with the Jews. It has everything to do with him and what he has done to the site. But how fascinating it is to see this, I know, historic thing that it's the Jews, to see it playing out as baldly as it is now. I read in the Atlantic today that over the Labor Day weekend, well, X, Twitter, was just taken over by Jew hate and a hashtag called Ban the ADL. Now, supposedly this is because they have been asking him, please, will you try to rein in some of this hate? Your advertisers don't want to be associated with it. It's why it doesn't make any sense for your business. And now he's decided that the advertisers have left because of pressure from the ADL, which is bullshit. I mean, absolutely bullshit. It's what he does, and it's how hate works. And I think it's a rare person that doesn't fall prey to it. When you're a member of a minority, you know that anything done by one member is then extrapolated to represent all. We saw how so many of our countrymen and women became just immediately crazed anti-Muslim, right? After 9/11. And every time the news shows some perp being walked into a jail and it's a black man, that just reinforces in every person's head. It's the constant reinforcement of black people, criminal. Muslims, killers, Jews, what? Fill in the blank. Connivers, controllers, somehow. And these tropes live in the bloodstream, I think. They will not ever be eradicated. And Elon Musk is really fanning the flames. He's gone full on old school anti-Semite. This extraordinarily powerful man, this boy child, this erratic megalomaniac. I think I've told you over the years that this is something that if you're a white Christian, straight white Christian in this country, you would have no way of understanding that if you are not that the reality of your life has different contours. If you're a black person, if you're a gay person, if you're a Jew, if you're Asian, whatever, you know all the possibilities, just not that you are seen by the dominant white Christians as an other. You know, I've often said, when something happens on the news and it's like a bad thing happened, a bad person did something, and the bad person's name sounds Jewish, I don't know a Jew who doesn't cringe. I don't know a Jew who doesn't cringe. Tell me. And you tell me if you're a white Christian and, you know, you hear about what? I don't know, Jeffrey Dahmer or Charles Manson. I'm assuming grew up white Christians, you know, look like white. Did you cringe? Oh, my God. One of ours. You don't. If you're part of the dominant, you don't react that way. And now that the dominant, the white Christians, have gone nuts, are acting crazy and scared and thinking they're under attack, as they lash out, believe me, this is going to be scary. I never thought I'd see anything like it in my life. And I do have to tell you that I'm just sick about it. I was talking to a white Christian friend the other day whose son married a Jew and whose child then would be considered of a Jewish womb, a Jew. And she wondered if, even though he's not being brought up as a Jew, he's not going to have a bar mitzvah or any of that, if he would be safe. And if you think this is histrionic, then you don't know your history. I have, I don't know. Oh, I'm sorry. Like I'm losing it here. I really do. Oh, I came upon something. I'm just going to change. Backing up, changing, forgive me. Virginia Montanez, who I've lauded many times before, puts out this, I don't know what you call it. What do you call what she does? Newsletter. It's not what it is. It's her thoughts. She's a wonderful writer, smart, whatever. She's the one I shared with you, her takedown of Marty Griffin recently. Well, she came out with another thing yesterday, and there's just so much delightful stuff on it. She's a Pittsburgh history buff. So she's often sharing his history nuggets that I just love. And I'll share one that is in her most recent offering. It's something she came upon. It's written in the Baltimore Sun newspaper, and it's from 1906. And it's written about Pittsburgh. Oh boy. Now let's acknowledge that Pittsburgh in 1906 was, hell with a lid off still. It was just, But here's what the Baltimore Sun said. Besides, this is after they went into all the robber barons, the Frick, Carnegie, all these the rich guys here who had created this monstrous horror of a city. The writer in the Sun called it the combined wealth and wickedness of this metropolis of smoke. And they went on with this. Besides its plutocracy and its scandal, Pittsburgh can boast of other legitimate claims to fame. Chief among these is the quality of its drinking water. The city has innumerable laundries and saloons, and both do a remarkable business on account of the state of the water. The careful housewife washes her clothes at home, and then, finding them dirtier than when she put them in the tub, sends the wash to the nearest laundry, which in some inexplicable way turns the clothes originally white from dark brown to mauve. The saloons, they're an absolute necessity. Unless a man patronizes them, he dies of thirst. If he drinks the Pittsburgh water, he dies of typhoid fever. God almighty. And then she had a clip from a stand-up comic, and I can't remember who. And he was doing this whole shtick on how many bridges were in Pittsburgh. And it is sort of incomprehensible because he mentioned, how many bridges? He said, let's take Venice. Venice, it's a city that is, literally built on, islands. I mean, just totally surrounded everywhere you look by water. You have to get around in boats and on water. Venice has fewer bridges than Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has 446 bridges. And as we know, when you have that many bridges, it's like really difficult to maintain them all. And, oh God. And, you have to wonder, though, we have 446, right, bridges. And how many are dangerous, I have no idea. Oh. But the comic was having it. They got three stinking rivers. It ain't Venice. How do they end up with 440? And I'm thinking, that's not fair. That's not fair. It's the topography. The bridges are not over water as much as they're over land. I said defensively. And just another thing that I saw that Virginia Mutton has put out there. God bless her. Apparently, there's a guy on, I don't know, what is he on? Is this on TikTok or something? What do I know? Who dresses up as a lanternfly. I kid you not. It is the funniest costume he's created. And he's a classic Pittsburgher looking guy. And the thing he puts out is called Lanternflies Be Like. So he just posts a thing with him in his costume, like just hanging out at a tree, you know, and it's lanternflies be like. They're sitting on your porch, whatever. I don't know. That somebody does that. There's so many funny, creative people out there now, and they all do, because of technology, have the capacity to put their stuff out there, to entertain, to be creative. And I guess there's just so many that it's overwhelming. But thank God for people like Virginia and others who are, you know, trolling around, certainly more than I, and finding this wondrous stuff that's out there. Hey, I was blown away because I saw that a woman who just won a primary for the Mexican presidency, her name, I'm looking at a picture of her, and it says her name is Shine Bomb. Here again, the Jew thing comes in. I see, what? She could well be the next Mexican president. First woman, but Shine Bomb? That ain't a Mexican name. I'm just saying. Shine Bomb, as any anti-Semite would tell you, that's got to be a Jew. And it is. What? A Jewish woman could be the president of Mexico? What the F? Are you kidding? I'm blown away. And so anyway, she was the mayor of Mexico City. And she stepped down to run for her party's, and it's the party is now in control. Her party, and she won the primary overwhelmingly. Looks like another woman is going to be running against her, and that woman is an indigenous woman. I love it. I love this on so many levels. It also shows how backward America is. We are so far from having a woman. We've stumbled a little toward it and always recoil because we are a regressive now. We are a more conservative nation, if that's the term. I don't think it is, than Mexico. Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, but she could well be. Claudia Sheinbaum. It says here that what's so bizarre about this is that women in Mexico were not given the right to vote until 1953. Whoa. See, this is where the misogynists are right. If you let them out of the kitchen, if you give them a vote, you know what's going to happen? You're going to have a president a Jew and a woman in 50 years, 60 years. So women currently lead both houses of the Mexican Congress. Women make up half of the Mexican legislature. This is so far and away more impressive and progressive than the country I'm residing in. Women in this country hold 28% of congressional seats, which is a record for us. But that is a pretty dismal showing in the world. As a matter of fact, if you want to know, if you look at women in power in national legislatures, parliaments, and congresses throughout the world, and people do, people crunch numbers all the time. The United States, in terms of women in these positions, is in 71st place. And if that's not appalling enough, that places us below Iraq. Hard to believe. I am so, the world has gone mad today, and good's bad today, and day's night today, and the fact today, and those guys today that women prize today are just silly gigolos. I'm sorry. Although I'm not a gay romancer. You know that song, right? I know that you're bound to answer when I propose. Anything goes. Cole Porter, ladies and gentlemen, the greatest. All right, Chris writes, well, maybe she's not a Jew. She could just be married to a Jew, and hence she got the Jewish name. I don't think that's it. Frankly. But that's worth looking at. They didn't go into her beginnings in this piece. And you know what? But it does remind me of, this sense of, there's so few Jews in the world. As a matter of fact, there's still not as many as there were before Hitler got to work. Jews have still not repopulated themselves from that mass spasm of Jew hate. Oh, wait, that's what I wanted to tell you. Here's the reason, and I have to find it. It's in that Atlantic article, and I'm going to have to find it. This blew me away because I know I'm all over the place today. Forgive me. But Jew hate in America, this idea that it's the Jews. One of the things that Jews know, and I had talked about this, is that if we complain about anti-Semitism, we are told that we're whining, we're complaining, and in fact, we're making people not like us. So, damned if you do, damned if you don't. You're supposed to take the hate and shut up. Because if you draw attention to the hate, you will be then charged with having created it in the first place, being sort of obnoxious, right? Jews know this. And one of the things that happened in the 30s when the Nazis started doing what they did, Jews in America looked with growing alarm and thought, what can we do? And a whole huge hunk of the Jewish population here said, shut up. It'll make things worse. People wanted to march in New York City. No, don't. And the reason being that Jews get put in this catch-22. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. And in fact, Jews did march in New York City. And Hitler and his group used that march to show to the German people how the Jews who control things, look at these Jews in America trying to decide what we can do here in our country. They used it to show Jewish power. Exactly what some of the Jews had worried would happen. The trope that it's Jews who are the ones who bring it on themselves is as old as Jew hate. Jews cause themselves to be persecuted, which is what Musk is now saying. Here's the numbers I was looking for. In 1938, on the eve of the Holocaust, a Gallup poll was taken in this country. And in that poll, more than half of Americans, 54%, said that the persecution of Jews in Europe is partly their own fault. Think about it. As Jews were being terrorized and their rights taken from them and the roundups beginning, the killing beginning, 54% of Americans said, well, you know, I mean, it's partly their fault. 11% more of Americans said it was entirely their fault. Folks, that's 65, that's 2/3 of Americans. 2/3 of Americans bought into that. 2/3 of Americans, including the greatest generation and their parents. You think that has dissipated? You think somehow that's gone? Not at all. And so when I talk about this, I know that some of you are thinking, shut the fuck up. I know. So there it is. 65% of Americans blamed Europe's Jews for their own extermination. A poll taken just 5 years ago in Europe saw 20% of Europeans believe that anti-Semitism is, of course, a response to the everyday behavior of Jews. We are so obnoxious that what is a person supposed to do but hate them? So, just saying. I wanted that out there because I don't know. I suppose this Jewish woman possibly being the just shows those Jews, those wily Jews. I mean, there's so few of them, but somehow they manage to, they do, don't they? A story I remember my dad telling me that I was so astonished by it. My parents, this would be in the 50s, my parents went to Mexico. Can't imagine my dad going to Mexico. They went to Mexico, and they were in a taxi cab. And my father said something to my mother in Yiddish. Now, she didn't really speak. He didn't speak great Yiddish, but his parents spoke Yiddish. So he said something, and I grew up hearing some of it from him and from my mother's mother. So, enough. He said something that she could understand. And he probably said it because he wanted to say something maybe that the cab driver wouldn't hear. And damn if the cab driver didn't respond in Yiddish. And my father was so blown away. A Yid, he said. When Jews come upon one another in a locale where you're not expecting to see another Jew, I give up. I'm sorry, I give up. I feel like I'm going to start crying, and time's up anyway. And I've all of a sudden have talked myself into, I'm going to go cry. You guys have a good day, a good week. Is it Thursday? Good. God, I don't know. Goodbye.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.